Hey everyone, my name is Gabriel Longoria-Carter, and today I'll be demonstrating a complete speed, power, plyometric, and agility-focused training session. The workout is designed around the concepts from the Essentials of the Training of Strength and Conditioning 4th edition, so I'll be really focusing on a lot of major components within that and athletic performance specifically. Muscular power, rate of force development, reactive strength, sprint acceleration, multidirectional movement, coordination, and neuromuscular efficiency is all going to be really touched on throughout this session. But throughout the workout, we're going to be explaining the importance of strength and conditioning concepts like the biomechanics, the planes of motion, muscular involvement, movement sequencing, stretch shortening cycle mechanics, and proper exercise progression throughout this session as well. And we will begin with a structured warm-up that designed to gradually increase our body temperature, elevate our heart rate, improve blood flow to the working tissue, and increase muscle elasticity and prepare the neuromuscular system just for movement patterns throughout the workout. According to the textbook, an effective warm-up can improve athletic performance while also decreasing the likelihood of injury. By preparing the body for both physiological and psychological events for higher intensity exercise, we can really prime our body for the movements throughout the day. Right now we're beginning with a stationary warm-up on the bike. This is going to be a general warm-up starting with the easier pace. Right now I'm beginning with a low intensity aerobic effort of about 50% intensity. The purpose of this initial phase is to gradually elevate core body temperature and begin increasing circulation to the working musculature. As our body temperature rises, muscle viscosity decreases, meaning that the muscles and connective tissue become less stiff and more compliant throughout the movement. This improves the efficiency and it prepares our body for the dynamic activity later in the session. The cycling is considered a cyclical pattern, meaning that the movement pattern is repetitive and rhythmical, which makes for easy and effective gradual increase of the heart rate without actually causing a strenuous amount of fatigue, though there can be fatigue. So you got to really understand your body and figure out what is the good warm-up pace for you. As we're increasing throughout the movement, my pace is increased, as you can see right now. It's more of a moderate to higher intensity, shooting for 60 to 70% right now. The warm-up should follow with the progressive overload approach, even at the low intensities. So instead of jumping immediately into explosive heavy movements, it's good to gradually expose your body into these increasing demands and stresses. So during the cycling, the primary joints involved include the hip joint, the knee joint, and the ankle joint. The major muscular contributors include the glute maximus for hip extension, quads for knee extension, hamstrings during the hip and knee hip extension and knee stabilization, and the gastrocnemius and the soleus in your calves for contributing to just the plantar flexion and finishing out that triple extension. From the biomechanical perspective, the movement pattern primarily occurs in the sagittal plane around the medial lateral axis because the body is moving forward and backward in motion. As we're finishing up, we're getting near our final-ish push. We're topping out at 80% effort right now. We're not that max effort where our heart rate is pumping out of our chest, but really allowing ourselves to get near that moment is going to be good for our priming of the body. For the final portion of the bike warm-up, we're increasing that, like I said, that 80%. This higher intensity phase helps bridge the transition between the general warm-up and the activity that's going to be more explosive throughout the day. And even just the specific warm-ups as well. After this general warm-up, we're going to transition into a specific warm-up with drills that are more closely resemble the sprinting, jumping, agility-based things. But as we're going to finish this out, it's just going to strictly be a generalized movement priming. So as I was saying earlier about the general and specific warm-ups, I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into that. The general warm-up is intended to increase the overall physiological readiness through low-intensity movement that elevate the heart rate, circulation, respiration, and tissue temperature, like I said earlier. Stuff like cycling, jogging, or just other aerobic movements that aren't going to be causing a lot of your type 2 fibers to be activated. We're not necessarily specific to the day itself, really just getting that overall heart rate up and blood flow and muscle temperatures similar to what we're going to be doing that day, but not exactly the same exact movement. The specific warm-up comes afterward, and this is actually designed to mimic similar movements throughout the day. For example, stuff like Now I'm transitioning into the jogging portion of the general warm-up. The purpose of this phase is to continue increasing the body temperature, heart rate, circulation, and neuromuscular readiness while beginning to introduce movement patterns that are more closely resemble the sprinting and multi-directional activities that will occur later on in the workout. Unlike the stationary bike, jogging introduces repetitive ground contact forces and more dynamic lower body mechanics. This begins preparing the muscles, tendons, and joint for force absorption and force production during sprinting, plyometrics, and ability drills, similar to the spring method that we were referring to in class. According to the Essentials of a Strength and Conditioning textbook, the warm-up should gradually process from general movements to more sport-specific activities. So while this is still considered a general warm-up, it is also incorporating a lot of the sport-specific movements we're going to be doing later in the workout. Like, for example, the acceleration and sprint mechanics. This is going to be very similar to those movement patterns, though not the exact same intensity or force output. During this jog, intensity should generally remain moderate. A good recommendation for most individuals is approximately 60 to 70% of your maximum heart rate. The goal is not conditioning fatigue. Like I said, this is just preparation. We're priming our body for similar movements and just getting our heart rate up, continuing that contractile tissue warmth. So if intensity becomes too high too early, fatigue can negatively impact the movement quality and explosive performances later in the workout. Instead, we want to progress into the activation of the cardiovascular and neuromuscular systems, not necessarily jump right into them, kind of like we were mentioning earlier. One of the main goals during this jogging is to increase the blood flow to the specific muscles that are going to be contributors, like in this movement specifically, the glute maximus for hip extensions, the hip flexors during leg recovery, quadriceps for knee extension, hamstrings for both hip extension and deceleration in the same movement, and your gastrocnemius and soleus for ankle plantar flexion and during the push-off and landing. So you're going to be doing a little bit more than the actual biking itself. The core musculature plays a major role in just stabilizing the trunk and helping the transfer of force efficiently between each body. So it's going to be a lot of a constant movement, similar to the cyclical, repetitive, rhythmic movements. From a biomechanical standpoint, jogging primarily occurs in the sagittal plane around the medial lateral axis, similar to biking. The body is producing cyclical flexion, like I was saying, and extensions patterns at the hip and knee and ankle joints. So we're going to be reaching that triple extension. The stance phase occurs while the foot is in contact with the ground and involves force absorption, followed by force production. So during this phase, the lower extremity must manage ground reaction forces while maintaining balance and forward propulsion. So there's a lot of things that go into jogging itself that don't actually seem very... The biomechanics are very thorough for a very simple movement, if that makes sense. The swing phase occurs when the leg is moving in the air in the preparation for the next foot strike. Efficiently, sprinting and running mechanics require coordination, timing between these two phases. Otherwise, you're going to be a whole mess. As you can see, some other concepts that I'm really focused on is a tall chest positioning, a neutral spine, and my shoulders are relaxed while my arms are contralaterally moving from my legs. That concludes our general warm-up. Now I'm transitioning into the specific warm-up portion of the workout with A-skips. According to the Essentials of Strength and Training and Conditioning, the goal of specific warm-up is to prepare the body for the exact movement patterns and neuromuscular demands that will occur later during the training session. Since this workout will be including sprinting and plyometrics along with Olympic lip variations and agility drills, A-skips are going to really help reinforce the mechanics needed to explore the explosive athletic movement. This drill primarily focuses on the sprint mechanics, posture, and coordination and force application consistently through the movement, and it occurs mainly in the sagittal plane around the medial lateral axis. This is going to have during the upward phase, we're going to have a lot of hip flexion, knee flexion, and ankle dorsiflexion. Dorsiflexion is really important because it prepares for the foot and the ankle for the efficient ground contact and force transfer during the actual sprinting mechanics and the stretch shortening cycle. As the opposite leg drives into the ground, the body produces triple extension through hip extension, knee extension, and that plantar flexion. Now I'm progressing into B skips, which build directly off of the A skip mechanics while adding a more emphasis on the ground strike and limb extension during the sprint mechanics. The movement starts with the aggressive hip flexion and dorsiflexion as the knees drive upward, followed by the controlled knee extension before the ground hits the floor, or before your foot hits the floor. The primary goal is reinforcing the front side sprint mechanics and teaching efficient force application into the ground rather than reaching excessively forward with the foot. The movement occurs primarily in the sagittal plane, involving rapid flexion, and it's a cyclical movement as well. I'm focusing on maintaining dorsiflexion, upright posture, and active arm drive, and quick ground contact times. Proper execution should feel rhythmic and reactive, not overly exaggerating and overreaching. The goal is effectively sprint mechanics, posture, coordination, and preparing the body for higher velocity sprint and plyometric work later in the session. Next, we'll be performing side shuffles to prepare for the lateral movement, change of direction, and the frontal plane force production. Unlike sprint drills that are primarily in the sagittal plane, this movement primarily focuses on the frontal plane mechanics involving hip adduction, hip abduction, and lateral force application. I'm maintaining an athletic position. My hips are back, my chest is upright, my knees are slightly flexed, and while my feet are mainly staying underneath the center of gravity. The primary muscles that are involved are going to be your glute medius, your adductors, your quadriceps, your hamstrings, and core stabilizers. I'm keeping my feet from crossing over to maintain balance and posture. You might see a little heel click, but we're trying to mitigate that as much as possible. And we're going to be focusing on efficient lateral deceleration mechanics. This drill helps on preparing the neuromuscular system for multidirectional movement and improves lateral coordination, reactive control, and lower body stabilization and overall agility and sprint, and will assist in the sprint work later today. Now I'm performing the karaoke drills, which are used to improve rotational coordination, hip mobility, lateral movement efficiency, and neuromuscular control before sprinting and agility work. To perform the movement, I am beginning in an athletic position with my knees slightly flexed and my chest is upright. I move laterally while crossing one leg over the other and then crossing the opposite leg behind the body in a continuous rhythmic pattern. The goal is to keep movement smooth and coordinated and keep that cyclical rhythm while allowing controlled rotation through the hips and the trunk. Unlike sprint drills that mainly occur in the sagittal plane, the karaoke is going to incorporate both frontal plane and the transversal plane rotation, making it more important for multidirectional athletic preparation and just overall performance in those ways. This drill helps improve the coordination between the upper and lower body while while preparing the neuromuscular system for the change of directions, and mechanics, lateral movement, and rotational control. Next, we're going to be getting into the pogos, which are used to improve reactive strength, ankle stiffness, and stretch shortening cycle efficiency before sprinting and plyometric activity. To perform the movement, I maintain an upright posture and produce quick, repetitive jumps primarily through the ankles while minimizing excessive knee bend and ground contact. I'm focusing on dorsiflexion during the landing, staying tall through the torso, keeping the contact short and reactive, and producing force vertically through the ground. This helps improve the elasticity, energy utilization, lower body reactivity, and overall explosiveness before progressing into the sprint plyometrics. Next, we are going to be getting into our reactive start times. We're not too focused right here on the overall sprint itself, but how fast we're able to begin the sprint. This is going to prime our body for the start phase in the stretch shortening cycle in the sprint, while also using the augmented trainer in this instance to help with our reactivity time and overall speed. This is in preparation for our later movements and sprints and agility drills that are going to involve similar starts and just overall similar biomechanics that are involved. Now I'm beginning with the vertical jump series, starting with the counter movement jumps. This exercise is designed to improve lower body power, rate of force development, and stretch shortening cycle efficiency through explosive triple extension. To perform the movement, I begin with an athletic stance, rapidly descend into the partial squat through an eccentric loading, then immediately reverse direction and explode vertically by extending the knees, hips, and ankles. The goal is to minimize the amortization phase, which is the transitional period between the eccentric and the concentric, allowing for greater elastic energy utilization and force production. The primary muscles involved include the glute max, the quadriceps, the hamstrings, the gastrocnemius, and soleus. Biomechanically, the movement primarily focuses on the sagittal plane and emphasizes rapid force production through triple extension. I'm focusing on explosive intent, on controlled landing mechanics, maintaining knee alignment, and absorbing force efficiently through the hips during the loading. The exercise helps improve neuromuscular recruitment, vertical force production, and reactive power development needed for sprinting, jumping, and just overall athletic performance. Now I'm beginning with the tuck jumps. Now I'm going to to perform the movement, I begin with an athletic stance, rapidly produce force through triple extension, then drive the knees upward at the torso at the top of the jump before landing under control and immediately resetting into the next repetition. This movement places greater emphasis on reactive explosiveness, lower body coordination, and rapid force production, while also increasing the demand on core stabilization during the airborne phase. I'm focusing on minimizing that ground control, like we said earlier, that amortization phase, maintaining upright posture, landing softly through the hips, and producing force as rapidly as possible during each repetition. The tuck jumps heavily utilize stretch shortening cycle and help improve reactive strength, neuromuscular efficiency, and elastic energy. The exercise is important for developing explosiveness, body control, and that rapid force production for sprinting, jumping, and just multi-directional performance. Now I'm performing continuous reactive jumps with the place of greater emphasis on the reactive strength, elastic energy utilization, and minimizing ground contact time like earlier. For this variation, my partner is giving me a verbal cue or a visual cue, but for this is going to be verbal. When I perform each jump, this adds the reaction and decision-making component rather than just relying completely on planned movement. So as you can see, it's a little bit more difficult to really nail down. I'm focusing on quick reaction time, minimizing that ground contact again, maintaining that good posture, and efficiently absorbing and reproducing force for each repetition. Next, I will be transitioning into broad jumps, which place more emphasis on horizontal power production and acceleration mechanics. To perform the movement, I will begin with an athletic stance, loading at the hip through a rapid eccentric counter movement, then explosively projecting project the body forward by producing triple extension through the hips, knees, and ankles together. Unlike the vertical jump that emphasizes vertical force production, broad jumps focus more on horizontal force application, which directly relates to sprint acceleration and forward propulsion. The movement primarily occurs in the sagittal plane and requires coordinated force transfer throughout the kinetic chain. The primary muscles involved are the glute max, quadriceps, your hamstrings, your gastrocnemius, and your soleus. These are going to be used to stabilize and transfer your force adequately. I'm focusing on explosive hip extension, projecting the center of mass forward, maintaining posture during my takeoff, and landing softly with controlled force absorption through the hips. This movement primarily utilizes the stretch shortening cycle and trains the body to rapidly produce force in the horizontal direction. These also improve acceleration ability, lower body power, and rate of force development, and overall explosive athletic performance. As we are beginning the continuous broad jumps, these are going to be increasing the reactive and elastic demands of the horizontal power production. To perform the movement, I repeatedly produce broad jumps in succession while maintaining pause between landing and takeoff, minimizing pauses between lands and takeoffs. The goal is to rapidly absorb force during the landing and immediately redirect it into the next horizontal jump using that stretch shortening cycle. The movement emphasizes horizontal triple extension, explosive hip extension, knee extension, and ankle plantar flexion, while maintaining that forward projection of that center mass. The primary muscles involved are the glute max, your quads, your hamstrings, your gastrocnemius, soleus, and there's going to be a lot of core stabilizers as well. I'm focusing on minimizing that ground contact time or that armorization, maintaining posture, producing force horizontally, and controlling the landing mechanics. This exercise improves the reactive strength, like we were saying earlier, and overall acceleration mechanics and deceleration mechanics. These are going to directly feed into our sprinting and explosive movements later on. The final broad jump variation is going to be broad jumps into a sprint. Now I'm progressing into this final one, which we combine horizontal plyometric power with acceleration mechanics into one movement. I perform the movement. I begin with an explosive broad jump by rapidly producing triple extension. The goal is to efficiently transfer force from the plyometric movement into the sprint propulsion with minimal delay, so minimizing that amortization. The exercise emphasizes horizontal force production, your rapid rate of force development, and reactive transition between explosive movements. Biomechanically, the movement occurs in the sagittal plane and requires coordinated force throughout the kinetic chain during both the jump and the sprint phase. The primary muscles involved are going to be your glute max, your quads, your hamstrings, your gastrocnemius, soleus, your hip flexors, and some core musculature. I'm really focusing on exploding through the hips during the jump, controlling the landing, and aggressively moving the body forward in projection right after the landing phase. We're going to be rapidly accelerating the mechanics immediately after the ground contact. And this movement heavily utilizes the stretch shortening cycle and improves that acceleration stability or ability, horizontal explosiveness, neuromuscular efficiency, and transition speed between force absorption and sprint proportion. Now I'm beginning the upper body plyometric series starting with the explosive push-ups. To perform the movement, I lower under control through the eccentric elbow flexion, then rapidly reverse direction and explosively press away from the ground with maximal intent. Biomechanically, this is going to be moving through the transverse plane at the shoulder and the sagittal plane at the elbow. The major muscles involved are going to be your pec major, your anterior delts, your tricep brachii, your serratus anterior, and other core stabilizers. I'm focusing on explosive concentric force production, maintaining a rigid torso, controlled eccentric loading, and efficient force transfer through the upper extremity kinetic chain. This exercise improves upper body power, neuromuscular recruitment, and explosive pressing ability needed for athletic body performance. The next movement is going to be the clap push-ups. Similarly, we're going to be using explosive and reactive demands for the upper body plyometric series. To perform this one, I rapidly descend into the eccentric loading and explosively press away from the floor with enough airborne displacement to perform a clap underneath with control. The variation places a greater emphasis on upper body production of power and rapid force output. And I'm focusing on maximal explosive intent, maintaining trunk rigidity, minimizing excessive ground contact time, and absorbing land forces efficiently through the upper extremities. So this is going to be also the short stretch cycle or stretch shortening cycle where we're going to minimize that amortization phase. The final one we're going to be doing is the knee falling reactive push-ups, which increase the eccentric and reactive demands of upper body force absorption and force production. For this variation, I begin at the tall kneeling position, allowing my body to fall forward under gravity, rapidly forcing the ground upon ground contact, and then immediately reverse direction into explosive push-up. These are getting pretty tough, as you can see, and I'm really focusing on reacting quickly upon that contact, minimizing the amortization phase, maintaining trunk stiffness, controlling their force absorption, and explosively producing force away from the floor. This improves, similar to the other ones, explosive performance, but we're also going to be really focusing on deceleration of the ability, reactive force production, and just your neuromuscular coordination overall. As we're moving on to the next movements, standing chest pass is going to be with the medicine ball. To perform this movement, I begin in an athletic stance, holding the medicine ball at chest level, then explosively extending the arms and project the ball forward while maintaining a posture and core stability. The movement emphasizes upper body power production and force transfer through the kinetic chain, but the primary muscles are going to be your pec major, your anterior delts, your tricep brachii, anterior serratus anterior, and your core musculature as well. Biomechanically, the movement occurs primarily through the transverse plane, through shoulder horizontal abduction, and sagittal plane elbow extension. I'm really focusing on exploding through the movement, maintaining good posture. We're going to be sequencing our coordination overall and producing maximum velocity on the release. This exercise is going to improve upper body power, neuromusculature recruitment, and synergy amongst different muscle groups along the kinetic chain. Now I'm progressing into the step pass phase with a addition of the lower body momentum and the kinetic chain sequencing to the medicine ball chest pass. I'm going to be performing this movement by initiating force from the lower body by stepping forward, then transferring energy through the hips, the trunk, and upper extremities before explosively releasing the medicine ball. This movement is improving our force transfer efficiency throughout the kinetic chain and teaches coordination, total body power production. So the primary muscles in this one is going to be your gluteals, your quadriceps, your core musculature, your pec major, your anterior deltoids, and your triceps brachii. I'm really focusing on sequencing force from the ground upwards through the kinetic chain, from the floor to your ankles, knees, hips, up into your upper extremities as well. I'm maintaining good posture, explosive trunk rotation and stabilization at the same time, and I'm also trying to maximize that velocity during the release. This exercise improves the total body coordination, your power transfer, and that athletic explosiveness. Really good for majority of the sports. Now I'm performing reactive medicine ball passes with a quick turn component. For this variation, my partner provides a cue that determines when and where I will be rotating explosively passing the medicine ball. The goal is to rapidly react, stabilize, and transfer force efficiently during the unpredictable movement. This is going to add a neuromuscular reaction and coordination component to the upper body plyometric training. The primary muscles involved include the core musculature, your obliques, your gluteals, your pectoral major, and your anterior deltoids. So I'm really focusing on reactively following the rules of the cue, whether it's left or right. I'm really focusing on allowing that energy transfer from the floor through the kinetic chain properly up into my upper extremities as well, and producing a high explosive velocity during the pass itself. This exercise is important to do on both sides so we can mitigate the amount of disparities between each side and really hope we can maintain symmetry. This exercise is going to improve reaction ability, rotational coordination, and upper body power through the kinetic chain and just efficiency during the athletic movements. Now I'm beginning the Olympic lift variation series with the bilateral dumbbell hang to begin. Bilateral dumbbell hang power cleans. To perform the movement, I start with the hang position with the dumbbells right above the knees, hinge at the hips while maintaining a neutral spine, then explosively extend at the hips, knees, and ankles to accelerate the load upward before catching the dumbbells at shoulder level. The movement should be driven primarily through the lower body power production rather than excessive arm pulling. However, there can be some involved. The variation emphasizes symmetrical force production and allows the athlete to focus on developing explosive triple extension and just overall coordination through total body power mechanics. The primary muscles involved are going to be your glute max, your quads, your hamstrings, your gastrocnemius, your traps, your deltoids, and your just core stabilizers as well. I'm really focusing on aggressive hip extension, keeping the dumbbells closely to the body and not dragging too far away from the midline, maintaining proper posture, and rapidly transitioning into the catching phase. Next, we're going to be doing the alternating dumbbell clean. I'm progressing into the alternating dumbbell cleans, which increase unilateral coordination and stabilization demands compared to the bilateral version. Instead of producing force symmetrically with both arms simultaneously, this variation requires one side of the body to stabilize while the other side generates force and receives the load. To perform the movement, I hinge at the hips, rapidly produce triple extension, and glide one dumbbell into the catching before alternating each side. Because the load is moving asymmetrically, the core and trunk musculature must resist excessive rotation and maintain alignment through the movement. The primary muscles involved are going to be your gluteals, your quadriceps, your hamstrings, your trapezius, your deltoids, your obliques, a lot more than your previous movement, and your core stabilizers as well. I'm really focusing on maintaining balance, producing force from the hips, controlling trunk positioning, and just efficiently transferring force through the kinetic chain. This variation was useful for improving unilateral coordination overall and stabilization and anti-rotational control. The final clean variation is going to be the dumbbell clean to press. So I'm going to be doing this in the bilateral movement to combine explosive lower power with upper body power, force transfer, overhead stability as well. To perform the movement, I first execute the clean by explosively extending at the hips, and knees and ankles, and bringing the dumbbells into the rack position, and then transitioning directly into the overhead press by driving the vertical load overhead. So compared to this earlier clean variation, this movement increases total body coordination demands because force must be continuously transferring past the initial clean into the press. So the movements emphasizes power production, shoulder stability, trunk control, and kinetic chain sequencing. I'm really focusing on generating that power from the lower body, maintaining a stable torso, and controlling the overhead position and upward vertical force. Now beginning the kettlebell push press, which combines lower body power production with upper body pressing mechanics. To perform the movement, I begin with the kettlebells at the front rack position, perform a quick little dip by flexing at the hips and the knees, and then violently extending through the lower body to transfer the momentum into the kettlebells before finishing the movement overhead. Unlike the strict shoulder press, the press uses a force generated from the lower body to the overhead body without allowing any of the elastic movement through the knees and the hip movement, whereas the kettlebell, we are allowing a slight bend in the knees and hips. For the unilateral variation, it's going to be a little bit more strict with this, and we're not going to need a lot of dip at the lower body because the overall weight's going to be lowered, though we're going to be using a lot of stabilizer muscles instead. So this variation is challenging shoulder stability, unilateral coordination, and just kinetic chain control to a greater degree than the bilateral one. I'm focusing on driving force from the lower body, but like I said, slightly because the weight's a little bit lightened, maintaining that alignment through the stabilizing of the overhead position, and controlling movement through the entire kinetic chain. The final phase we're going to get into is the split stance, just jerk press. Now I'm progressing into this stance, which is going to increase the speed a little bit, the coordination and stabilization demands of the overhead movement, just because we're in that split stance. Unlike the push press variation where the legs mainly assist, the jerk places greater emphasis on force production on like the receiving end of the load efficiently underneath rather than the actual explosive part. So we're not really going to be allowing for much use of that lower body. There is going to be some, but not nearly as much as you would expect. I'm focusing on producing force rapidly, moving efficiently underneath the load, and maintaining balance in the split position, and really stabilizing the movement just because that split position is going to naturally have a lower end of stabilization. Now I'm beginning the agility series with the standard in and outs using a visible floor line as my main movement reference. To perform the movement, I rapidly move both feet in and out across the line while maintaining an athletic position and a controlled rhythm. Even without the ladder, the line still provides a visual target that helps reinforce foot placement, accuracy, coordination, and movement timing. The goal is to create quick ground contacts while maintaining posture, balance, and lower body control. The movement primarily occurs in the frontal plane because the lateral displacement of the rapid repositioning of the feet. I'm focusing on staying light on the feet, minimizing contact time, maintaining posture, and producing efficient lateral force mechanics. This drill helps improve reactive footwork, coordination, and change of direction of efficiency important for athletic performance. The next ones I'm going to be progressing into is the jump in and outs. Using the same floor line as reference, instead of stepping through the movement, I'm now producing repeated jumps across the line, maintaining a rhythm, body control. The variation increases the plyometric and reactive demands of the drill by emphasizing rapid force absorption and force production during each contact. I'm focusing on staying reactive, minimizing ground contact time, maintaining alignment, and controlling load mechanics throughout the drill. The movement heavily utilizes the stretch shortening cycle because the body must quickly transition from landing into the next explosive jump. The final progression I'm going to be getting into is the backward in and outs. I'm going to be maintaining the same in and out foot pattern while traveling backward under control. Moving backward increases coordination and proprioceptive demands because the visual awareness of the movement pattern becomes just limited. The variation challenges balance, the foot placement, accuracy, and neuromuscular control during the reverse movement mechanics. The drill improves movement awareness, coordination, and multidirectional athletic control. For the next one, we're going to be doing the Icky Shuffle. Though you could use a ladder, for this one I'm using a dumbbell as reference in the visual box. We're going to be performing I step one foot inside as reference, beginning the second foot, and then move the left foot outside. So we're going to be doing 1 foot at all times is out, and we're going from 1 foot to 2 feet in to 1 foot on the outside, and we're just going to speed it up as fast as we can. To perform them, or the dumbbell is like my marker to help demonstrate proper positioning and reinforce the pattern of just getting 2 feet inside and then 1 foot outside during each rep. The primary muscles involved are going to be your glutes, your quads, your hamstrings, your calf, and your hip stabilizers, as well as just core musculature as well. The key is to stay rhythmic and minimize ground contact, maintain posture, and producing efficient lateral movement. The next variation we're doing is the backwards shuffle. And this one is going to be a little bit more tricky as you're limiting your visual view, so your proprioception is going to be challenged in a little bit more difficult way. This variation also challenges the movement sequencing overall because you're not used to moving backwards. The last one we're going to do is a complete forward and backward movement. So for this one, we're going to go through it normally with the Icky Shuffle variation being forward. And then we're going to be following it back directly right after. This drill is going to be challenging our coordination, acceleration, deceleration, and re-acceleration, and just movement adaptability. I'm really maintaining my posture, reacting quickly during the transitions, and controlling my body position. I'm not flailing too hard, and when you see I center myself back down and just continue the rep. This movement improves agility, coordination, multi-directional control, and reactive athletic movement, and just overall efficiency for performance. Next, we will be performing the star drill using kettlebells as a cone reference points arranged in a star pattern. For this variation, I'll be using my hands to touch each kettlebell before returning back to the center position. To perform the drill, I begin with the athletic stance, rapidly moving towards the designated kettlebell, lower my center of mass under control, touch the kettlebell with my hand, and move directly back to the center. The movement emphasizes multi-directional acceleration, deceleration, coordination, and change of direction mechanics. Because the body is constantly stopping and redirecting force, the drill heavily challenges lower body stabilization and reactive control as well. The primary muscles involved include the gluteals, your quads, your hamstrings, your gastrocnemius, cores, hip stabilizers, and your core musculature. I'm really trying to stay low in an athletic position, planting efficiently, controlling the deceleration and acceleration, and rapidly re-accelerating between directions. The next one we're going to be doing is the foot variation. I'm going to be progressing with the foot touch variation at the end of each kettlebell for those targets. Instead of touching the kettlebells with my hands, I'm now just using my feet. To perform the drill, I rapidly move toward each kettlebell, control my body position, maintain that foot toward the target, then quickly redirect the movement back to the other position. I'm really focusing on a quick foot repositioning, maintaining posture, controlling balance, and effectively transitioning between directions as you're going to be off balance with 1 foot being off the ground. The final reactive star drill we're going to be doing is the reactive one. This is going to be augmented with a person helping you. So my partner was just calling out whether it was forward, backwards, left or right, and whether it was the hand or the foot. So we just did R hand, L hand, B hand, or B foot, or whatever, just quickly to get it out there. Or they could even just point. The difference is you're going to be having that reactive processing time. So this is going to create that unpredictable movement environment that forces rapid reaction. Decision making and your directional adjustments also going to be challenged, and just overall adaptability. Like the previous ones, I'm really trying to stay in that athletic position and immediately accelerate to the kettlebell and then perform right back to position. I'm really focusing on reacting quickly to the cue overall, maintaining balance and posture, and controlling that directional change. Now I'm beginning the sprint training portion of the workout with 10-yard acceleration sprints. To perform the sprint, I begin in an athletic position, starting with forward body lean, then aggressively project the body forward into producing force through the hips, knees, and ankles. The focus of short acceleration sprints is maximizing horizontal force production and rapid rate of force development during the early phases of sprinting. Because I'm currently returning from injury and rebuilding sprint mechanics overall, I'd still be considered a novice or developmentally in the earlier levels of this, mainly because I'm still regaining and redeveloping the higher velocity movement patterns. Because of that, my main emphasis is more quality movement and posture and efficient mechanics rather than maximal intensity, though I definitely still feel the intensity even in the moment of these workouts. The primary muscles involved are going to be your glute max, quadriceps, your hip flexors, and core musculature along with your calves. I'm really focusing on controlling but exploding in my first step mechanics, maintaining solid posture, projecting force horizontally, and producing efficient ground contacts underneath the body. This drill is going to be helping really with acceleration mechanics, lower body power production, sprint coordination, and just neuromuscular explosiveness. It's really key to be focusing on your overall form when performing these drills. The next movement is going to be 25 yards as we progress and do a little bit more challenging. This is going to be just extending that acceleration phase and beginning into transitioning towards higher sprinting velocities. Like I said earlier, I'm not necessarily at that complete phase yet, as I'm still redeveloping the confidence in the sprint mechanics following the injury. So the focus for me will primarily be controlled acceleration, posture, and just movement efficiency rather than pure maximum speed. Compared to the shorter yard 10-yard sprint variation, this places greater emphasis on mechanics and overall efficient force application over a long distance. To perform the sprint, I accelerate aggressively early in the run and then gradually transition towards a taller sprint posture as velocity increases. The primary muscles involved are going to be the same as last time, with your glutes, your quads, your hamstrings, your hip flexors, and gastrocnemius, soleus, and core musculature as well. I'm really focusing on, for me, the smooth acceleration mechanics, coordinated arm drive, maintaining that posture, and efficient force transfer amongst the sprint. The final drill we're going to be getting into is the falling start sprint. So now I'm progressing into the falling starts, which really emphasizes acceleration timing, reaction mechanics, and forward body projection. To perform the movement, I begin in a tall position, lean forward until gravity initiates the movement, and then rapidly transition into explosive sprint acceleration. The falling start helps reinforce proper acceleration angles and teaches the athlete to project the center of mass forward during the early stages of the sprint mechanics rather than upwards. Since I'm still rebuilding that higher speed, movement, and capacity following an injury, the variation is useful because it helps with patterns, reinforcing proper acceleration, sequencing, and just posture without overcomplicating the movement pattern itself. The movement requires rapid coordination between the upper and lower body during the transition from the lean into the sprint propulsion. As you just saw me briefly come back onto the page or onto the screen, now I'm transitioning into a deceleration drills, starting with the sprint to hard stop repetitions. So I initially get to that full speed as I'm accelerating forward under control, and then I rapidly decelerate and bring the body to a complete stop while maintaining that posture. I'm really focusing on lowering the center of mass, maintaining proper knee alignment, controlling momentum, and absorbing force through the hips and the lower extremities while collapsing forward. This drill is really going to be improving deceleration ability, eccentric control, and movement efficiency. The next one we're getting into is the sprint to stop back pedal. So now I'm progressing from the sprint to the back pedal, which combines acceleration, deceleration, and reverse movement mechanics. The movement requires coordinated force absorption, posture control, and rapid repositioning of the lower extremities. This drill is going to be challenging the body's ability to efficiently reorganize the movement mechanics during the rapid directional transitions. The next one is going to be our cut sprint mechanics. This drill is going to be combining acceleration, deceleration, and change of direction into one continuous movement. As you can see, I am accelerating forward. I plant and redirect the body during the cut phase, then rapidly reaccelerate in the new direction. I'm focusing on lowering my center of mass, planning efficiently, maintaining posture, and rapidly re-accelerating after the directional change. Since I'm still redeveloping a higher speed capacity, this drill allows me to focus on heavy controlled mechanics and efficiently transfer force during cutting movement specifically. This exercise is going to increase and improve the agility, deceleration control, reacceleration ability, and multi-directional athletic movement for efficiency. Now I'm going to be performing the standard 5-10-5 shuttle drill, which emphasizes acceleration, deceleration, and rapid change of direction in one. To perform the drill, I begin in the athletic position, accelerate laterally towards one direction, plant, redirect, sprint across the full distance, and then reaccelerate, change, decelerate, and then change direction back again through the center. This drill heavily challenges force absorption, braking mechanics, and rapid reacceleration during multi-directional movement. The primary muscles involved include the gluteals, your quads, your hamstrings, calf musculature, hip stabilizers, and core stabilizers. I'm focusing on lowering my center of mass during the cuts, planting efficiently, maintaining posture, and producing explosive directional changes. The drill improves agility, reactive coordination, deceleration control, and multi-directional efficiency. Commonly used in sports like football and basketball or combines, for example. The way we set this up is going to be a 10-yard split. We're going to be standing in the middle, and the left is going to be 5 yards, and the right is going to be 5 yards. And we're going to be running to the left laterally 5 yards, touch at the cone, go completely 10 yards all the way across, touch, and then we're going to finish through at the middle line. So the middle line is the finish line, essentially. So as you can see right there, I finished the line. The key is to go as fast as you can and change multi-directions efficiently and properly while maintaining posture. The next one we're going to get into is going to be very similar, but instead of sprinting completely, we're going to add a back pedal variation. So as you can see, the setup is basically identical, but now I'm going to be progressing into the back pedal variation. To perform, I begin by standing in the middle, running to the left, backpedaling the full 10-yard distance, and from that backpedal, we're going to transition back into the sprint. The primary muscles we're going to involve are quads, hamstrings, glutes, calves, and core stabilizers. We're going to also be challenging your proprioception because in the backpedal variation, we are not going to have a lot of visuals. So we're going to need to rely on our proprioception to get us through the movement itself. For the vinyl variation, we're adding some competition to it, where my trainer or my partner is going to be adding an augmented timer, meaning that we're going to be trying to beat our previous times. And I want to say my first time was 12 seconds, and the second time was 10 point whatever seconds. So I did beat my time, and that was the overall goal, which helped enhance the performance slightly, adding a little bit more of a challenge element to it, game-like situations. That concludes the overall workout itself. We're going to get into more of the cool down and stretching phase. Now I'm transitioning into the cool down phase of the workout, beginning with a controlled walk. According to the Essentials Strength and Training and Conditioning, the cooldown phase is designed to gradually transition the body from high-intensity activity back towards resting physiological levels rather than abruptly stopping the movement. During the workout, the body experienced significant neuromuscular, cardiovascular, and metabolic demand through sprinting, plyometrics, Olympic lift variations, multi-directional agility work. And the purpose of the walking phase is to gradually lower that heart rate, the ventilation rate, sympathetic nervous system, and just overall activity while maintaining circulation to the working musculature still. Low-intensity movement helps it continue a lot of returns and reduce excessive blood pooling that could occur if activity stops suddenly, especially after an intense exercise. I'm also focusing on controlled breathing patterns and my strict posture and relaxed movement mechanics during this phase. Throughout the workout, many of the major principles from the textbook were demonstrated, including the rate of force development, stretch shortening cycle efficiency, triple extension, acceleration and deceleration mechanics, the flight phases of running, neuromuscular coordination, reactive strength, and kinetic chain force transfer. The workout progressively moved from general preparation into highly explosive and sport-specific movement patterns, which followed the progression principles that emphasized throughout the strength and conditioning program. This cooldown phase helps with restoring the body toward baseline while still reinforcing movement quality and recovery. Now we were getting into the controlled back pedal movement into the cooldown phase. Now, though intensity is significantly reduced compared to the sprint and agility portions, this movement still reinforces the posture and coordination and controlled lower extremity mechanics, while allowing the body to gradually still recover. Backpedaling challenges the proprioception, your balance, and your neuromuscular control differently than the forward locomotion, mainly because the visual awareness is going to be reduced, and you must rely heavily on your body positioning and space sequencing. As you can see, I grab the handles occasionally, but try my best to not really rely on them as much and really challenge my proprioception. Throughout the semester and throughout the workout, one of the biggest concepts repeatedly emphasized in the textbook is that athletic performance is not solely dependent on muscular strength, but also on efficient movement mechanics, coordination, and force application, along with just neuromuscular control overall. During the sprint and plyometric sessions, the body was repeatedly required to absorb force eccentrically and rapidly, redirect it concentrically through the stretch shortening cycle phase. Exercises such as the counter movement jumps, the broad jumps, reactive drills, the Olympic lift variations, all train the body's ability to rapidly generate force and efficiently transfer energy throughout the kinetic chain. Another major concept demonstrated throughout the workout was triple extension, involving explosive hip extension, knee extension, and ankle plantar flexion. The cooldown phase now allows the body to gradually transition towards recovery while reinforcing controlled movement and postural awareness. We're going to keep continuing this cooldown phase as we get into a little bit more dynamic, and then finally we're going to get into some more static-ish movements. Starting with the lateral strided shoulder adduction swings. Now I'm transitioning into the lateral stride arm swings with adduction swings as part of the cooldown mobility portion of the workout. The movement helps with gradually reducing intensity while continuing to improve mobility, coordination, and movement restoration following after the high-intensity sprinting, plyometric, and agility portions. Biomechanically, the movement pattern occurs in the frontal and transverse plane because the body is moving laterally, while the upper extremities move through the rotational and adduction-based movement patterns. The shoulder joint moves primarily through horizontal adduction and horizontal abduction, while the trunk helps assist with rotational control and stabilization. The primary muscles involved are going to be the deltoids, pec major, the traps, the rhomboids, hip adductors, glutes, and core stabilizers as well. Really focused on maintaining posture, staying relaxed through the shoulders, and continuing with lateral movement. The next thing we're going to get into is some arm circles. And so from here, we're going to be using these to restore mobility and reduce upper body stiffness following the upper body plyometrics, like the medicine ball portions and the push-ups. To perform the movement, I move the shoulders through the controlled circular patterns in both forward to start and then backwards directions at the end, while maintaining a slow build-up phase from small circles to large circles. I'm focusing on smooth, controlled motion, maintaining solid posture, and restoring mobility through the shoulder complex. Directly following this, we're going to be getting into the deep stretching, deep breathing and stretches as we continue. The goal is to reduce sympathetic nervous system activity and promote relaxation throughout the high neuromuscular and metabolic demands of the workout. I'm focusing on my slow diaphragmatic breathing patterns while maintaining relaxed posture and controlled movement. Deep breathing can help with recovery by gradually reducing the heart rate and restoring that more controlled breathing mechanics following intense exercise. This phase also allows for the body to transition from high output athletic movement towards recovery and restoration. Now I'm performing the hamstring sweeps to improve the posterior chain mobility and restore movement quality following the workout. To perform the movement, I step forward with one heel on the ground and toes elevated, hinging at the hips while maintaining a neutral spine. Then sweep the hands toward the foot before returning upright into the upright position with my postures maintained, repeating the opposite side, and that's how you complete one full rep. The movement dynamically stretches the hamstrings while reinforcing proper hip hinge and mechanics and postural control. The primary muscles targeted are going to be your hamstrings, glutes, and your lower back flexors and extensors. I'm focusing on maintaining that neutral spine, hinging through the hips, and moving under control without excessive spinal flexion. This drill is going to improve our posterior chain mobility, movement efficiency, and recover as we're getting into the slower heart rate and overall still maintaining that blood circulation into said muscles that we targeted throughout the workout today. The next movement I'll be doing is the walking lunge stretches to improve hip mobility, ankle flexion mobility, lower body flexibility overall, and movement restoration. To perform the movement, I step into a controlled lunge position while lowering the hips and maintaining an upright posture before transitioning into the next rep. I'm really going to focus on allowing my knees to push over my toes, allowing for great plantar flexion, really allowing for a deep stretch in your gastroc, in your soleus, in your calf. We're also going to feel a good stretch into your hip flexors on the posterior leg, as it's going to be lengthening. This movement dynamically stretches the hip flexors, quadriceps, your adductors, and your lower extremities, especially your calves, while reinforcing balance and lower body control. I'm really focusing on maintaining my posture, keeping the movement controlled, and keeping my core engaged, while also allowing the hips to move through the full range of motion and not stopping them too short. This drill is really focusing on mobility, recovery, and just lower body movement quality overall. This movement also reinforces unilateral lower body stability because each step requires the body to control force independently, one leg at a time. That becomes especially important in athletic performance because sprinting, cutting, decelerating, and jumping are all heavily dependent on that unilateral force absorption and stabilization, along with the force output as well. Now I'm going to be performing the cat-cow movements to improve spinal mobility, trunk movement restoration, and postural control following the workout. The goal is to create a smooth, controlled spinal movement while coordinating breathing and trunk control. To perform the movement, I begin in the quadruped position with hands underneath the shoulders and knees underneath the hips. I then alternate between spinal flexion during the cat position and spinal extension during the cow position, while controlling movement throughout the thoracic and lumbar spine. After high-intensity athletic movement, the spine and surrounding musculature can become stiff from repetitive force production and stabilization demands. The cat-cow movement helps restore the movement variability throughout the spine while promoting the circulation and the mobility through the trunk and the pelvis too. The cat-cow movement is primarily going to be involving your erector spinae in your lower back, your rectus abdominis, your abs, your obliques as well, and then deep signal stabilizers or scapular stabilizers and hip musculature overall. I'm really focusing on control, spinal movement, segmental mobility, really allowing for separation between the thoracic and the lumbar as part of your spine. And then the next movement we're going to be getting into is a bird dog. So with these, we're going to be really reinforcing our trunk stability, postural control, and the coordination between the upper and lower body while maintaining that balance as well. To perform the movement, I begin in the quadruped position again, then simultaneously extend the opposite or the contralateral arm and leg while maintaining a stable torso and a neutral spine, before returning back under control and repeating on the opposite side. The goal is to maintain that trunk stability and resist excessive spinal rotation of shifting while the extremities move dynamically. This is going to really allow for a lot of synergy to occur within your body, especially within the lower and upper extremities. The movement heavily emphasizes core stabilization and neuromuscular coordination because the body must stabilize through the trunk while producing movement at the shoulders and the hips contralaterally. Throughout this workout, the core musculature played a major role in force transfer, postural control, deceleration mechanics, and stabilization during sprinting, jumping, Olympic lift variations, and even the agility drills. The bird dog reinforces many of those same stabilization principles at the lower intensities during the recovery phase directly. I'm finishing up the cool down phase with the deep squat shifts as part of the final recovery and movement restoration phase. To perform the movement, I lower into a deep squat, position the ankles while maintaining posture and balance, then slowly shift side to side, moving through the hips, the ankles, and the lower extremities under control. The movement helps restore mobility through the hips, the adductors, your ankles, and lower body kinetic chain following the high-intensity sprinting, jumping, and just overall agility drills throughout the workout today. I'm really focusing on maintaining my posture, keeping my heels grounded as much as I can, and controlling the shifts, and allowing the lower body to move through a comfortable range of motion. Since I'm still rebuilding some higher speed movement patterns following the injury, a major focus throughout the workout was maintaining movement quality, posture, and controlled progression while continuing to redevelop the athletic performance capacity. Overall, this workout integrated many of the major principles we learned throughout the semester, while we still maintained the ability to demonstrate strength and conditioning concepts directly applying in athletic performance every day.